Hello, and welcome back to History's Hidden Weird, the podcast where the past isn't just full of kings and battles, but some of the strangest true stories you've probably never heard of. I'm your host, Quinn Strange. Today's episode features a military operation so over the top, so absurd in concept and scale, that if it had been in a movie, you'd call it unrealistic. It involved chainsaws, B-52 bombers, and a tree. Yes, a tree. This is the story of Operation Paul Bunyan. Let's set the stage. The year is 1976. The place, the Korean Demilitarized Zone, or DMZ. This 160-mile-long, 2.5-mile-wide strip of land separates North and South Korea. It's heavily guarded, mined, and monitored, and it's a constant site of tension. At the heart of this tension is an area called the Joint Security Area, the JSA. It's the only spot in the DMZ where soldiers from both sides stand face to face. Literally. No fences, just painted lines, a few buildings, and a whole lot of nerves. In this surreal standoff zone, one tree stood out. A large poplar tree. It sat near Checkpoint 3, blocking the view between a South Korean checkpoint and a United Nations observation post. This was a security concern. So the decision was made to trim it. Sounds reasonable, right? On August 18, 1976, a team of U.S. Army and South Korean soldiers, armed with axes, went to prune the tree. As they worked, North Korean soldiers approached. At first, they watched. Then they shouted. Then, without warning, they attacked. In what became known as the Axe Murder Incident, 2 U.S. officers, Captain Arthur Boniface and First Lieutenant Mark Barrett, were beaten to death with axes and tools. Other members of the team were injured. It was brutal, fast, and completely unprovoked. The U.S. and South Korean forces were stunned. But now they had to respond. And not just with words. This was the Cold War, and every action had to be calibrated, deliberate, and bold. What they planned next was equal parts deterrent and theater. Enter Operation Paul Bunyan, named after the mythical lumberjack of American folklore. But this operation wasn't a joke. It was a calculated show of overwhelming force, designed to send a very clear message to North Korea: don't mess with us. 3 days after the killings, on August 21st, Operation Paul Bunyan was launched. The goal? Cut down the tree. Completely. But do it in the most intimidating way possible. Let's talk logistics. A convoy rolled into the JSA with 24 American soldiers carrying chainsaws. But they weren't alone. Over 60 troops from the South Korean Special Forces, elite martial artists trained in hand-to-hand combat, stood guard. Behind them? Heavy backup. In the air, B-52 bombers flew overhead, fully loaded and visible. Fighter jets, F-4 Phantoms, screamed across the sky. Helicopters hovered at the edge of the DMZ. On the ground, tanks and artillery moved into position. Troops were mobilized. Even an aircraft carrier group was placed on high alert. All of this, for one tree. But this wasn't just arbor work. This was strategy. This was theater. This was war without the war. And here's the kicker: despite this enormous show of force, no shots were fired. The chainsaws roared to life, and in under an hour, the tree was gone. Cut down. Mission accomplished. North Korea, stunned by the display, made no move. Later, they even issued a rare statement of regret over the incident, an incredibly unusual move from a regime that rarely admits wrongdoing. So why go through all that trouble? Why not just bomb the tree? Or send a sniper? Or ignore it entirely? The answer lies in Cold War diplomacy. Every action had to be symbolic, calculated, and most importantly, non-escalatory. By cutting the tree down in daylight, with overwhelming backup but no direct aggression, the U.S. and South Korea demonstrated strength without sparking a new war. The whole point of Operation Paul Bunyan was to walk a fine line. Show power, but not provoke. It was psychological warfare. An act of diplomacy wrapped in spectacle. And in that sense, it worked. The operation became a textbook case in the use of force for deterrence. It's still studied by military strategists today. It also remains one of the strangest, most oddly theatrical moments in military history. There's even more weirdness to it. The South Korean special forces who stood guard were equipped with clubs, axes, and their own martial arts skills, because they didn't expect to survive if a firefight broke out. Their role wasn't just symbolic. It was sacrificial. And as for the name, Paul Bunyan, that was a bit of dark humor. A nod to the absurdity of the situation. A mythical lumberjack summoned for an international incident. Operation Paul Bunyan is the kind of historical episode that feels more like satire than fact. It's about trees, tools, and tension. It's about death, diplomacy, and deterrence. And it reminds us just how fragile peace can be, balanced, sometimes, on the branches of a single tree. If you liked today's episode, leave a review, share with your weird history-loving friends, and hit follow. Have a strange story you want us to cover? Comment below and we will see what we can do. I'm Quinn Strange, and this has been History's Hidden Weird. If you enjoyed today's episode, share it with someone who thinks history is just dates and dusty books. And remember, sometimes, the weirdest wars are the ones that never actually happen. Catch you next time.